In 2020, Formula 1 saw a short revival of classic venues or countries coming back into the F1 calendar because of the pandemic, which was something I really enjoyed. For once, the new venues we were getting weren't just fake street circuits, but proper, permanent racetracks with a lot of character, such as Imola, which is now a proper part of the calendar again, Mugello, Istanbul, the Nürburgring, and of course, Portimao. Now, of course, Portimao was an entirely new venue for Formula 1, and it's not really a classic track as it was opened in 2008, but just like Istanbul Park, it was one of the best new tracks built in the 2000s. So I was very excited to see F1 finally race there, and the race in 2020 was quite good. F1 then returned, still being kind of plagued by COVID in 2021 with a race that wasn't that great, but the racing, especially in the midfield, showed that it is actually a good racetrack for Formula 1. Thankfully, despite the track not being in the calendar anymore, we can still enjoy it virtually in F1 22, which makes me very happy as this is my favorite track in the game since its introduction last year. However, there is another track in Portugal, the country's number one until Portimao opened, and the track that held the most Portuguese Grand Prix with 13 out of 18 editions in Formula 1, the Circuito do Estoril. F1 raced here from 1984 to 1996. Here is where Niki Lauda clinched his final championship in 1984, Ayrton Senna took his maiden F1 win here in 1985, and Alain Prost also took his fourth and final world championship in 1993 on this track. Since then, the circuit has undergone some changes, one being quite good for racing as turn 1 got a little slower, so you could actually try to make a move into there opposed to the very fast corner that was there beforehand. And probably the most horrific chicane there ever was, even worse than the one in Barcelona, which was created after Senna's fatal crash in 1994 to make the track safer. Nowadays, it is mostly used for minor European and national GT or touring car series and has disappeared from the schedule of any major racing series. Before we go into judging the track even more, before we have even driven there, let's take a modern F1 car around this track for a quick hot lap. First impressions? It's quite challenging and you have to get used to the many kinda slower corners that always trick you into thinking you can accelerate now when you actually can't. It's quite frustrating in these modern 22 cars. With classic cars and GT3s it was a lot more fun and pretty enjoyable, but it took some time to get some enjoyment out of this track in modern F1, but it is possible to enjoy your ride here. The one thing really terrible here is that stupid chicane, which really is the worst Mickey Mouse corner that exists anywhere. Honestly, who thought that was a good idea in the first place? But hey, okay, it might have been a quick fix in 1994, but Jesus, you had 28.5 years time now to come up with a better idea, but yet that thing is still there. But as I said, apart from that, it's quite okay, I guess. Runoff, or at least some walls, could use some changes, but it could still work on safety grounds. F1 cars have changed quite a bit since they last raced here though, and that track, as mentioned, remained quite the same. I'm a bit skeptical if racing here would work, considering that even back when F1 came here it wasn't known for brilliant racing, but Turn 1 has been changed, and nevertheless, here is a 5-lap race with modern F1 cars on the Circuito de Estoril. And here we are on the grid as Lewis Hamilton on the Circuito de Estoril, and it's lights out and away we go. And we get quite a good start. We are already past the McLaren there, which was Daniel Ricciardo, and now we're alongside the Red Bull here going into turn 1, which worked quite well. Now we have to defend against our teammate on the inside, which we do, and now through the bit that is a little annoying to drive, as I was telling you earlier, because these corners really lure you into, yeah, you can get on the power, but it's actually not the case, as we slip up the inside of Sergio Perez, who took a really weird line through that corner as he was trying to make it past the Ferrari ahead, and that obviously didn't work. This is the second straight, which could also be a DRS straight, the one that we just passed. I don't think this would be a great overtaking opportunity, as well the braking zone isn't too hard, so, and the straight a little short. And now that is that horrific chicane I have been talking about earlier. That is really, really terrible, and accelerating out of there with the modern F1 car is terrible as well. So, well, yeah, this corner here, the final corner, is a lot more fun, as it is really, 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 really fast, and, well, you can really slingshot out of there onto the straight, as we're trying to make it past Leclerc, which we don't. The start-finish straight, therefore, is pretty long, especially considering that you can already build up speed in that final corner, so overtaking there should actually work pretty well. We were pretty close there, and of course we won't have DRS, as this isn't a track that is used by Formula 1, but the pit straight would definitely be a DRS zone, and with DRS I think overtaking is very much possible, as we're seeing the two Ferraris battling each other ahead of us. And now once again through the terrible chicane. Whoa, and I think the Ferrari ahead of us got it very wrong there, so we actually made a move in that corner. You wouldn't usually see that, I think. And now once again through the final corner, really get a good run on Sainz, I think it is now ahead, or did Leclerc make it past? Well, anyways, we are now alongside Sainz on the main straight. It is Sainz, I've just seen that. But Sainz is later on the brakes, and we receive a track limits warning. I think that was pretty harsh. I don't feel like we really cut the first corner, but that might also be... I might be wrong. Sometimes hard to see that from the cockpit view. But, yeah, Sainz is still ahead of us, and to my surprise, the racing here is really quite good so far. So, it is mainly taking place on the start-finish straight, that is true, but oh, and this will be another track limits warning. Yeah, there it is. So, from that point of view, in terms of track limits, this is definitely a track for modern F1. Because no track without track limit discussions, right? And now, oh, that wasn't the best of lines through that chicane, and accelerating out of there is so terrible, as it is uphill and you're in such low gears that it is really annoying. But now we are very close to Sainz. This time surely it has to work. We are very early alongside on the pit straight. I have to change our ERS mode as the battery is nearly empty, and this time we are late on the brakes, a little too late on the brakes, as we lock up our tires, and Sainz counters it. That is actually working pretty well. I don't think the AI are behaving ideally on the track and using the ideal lines, which makes it a little easier to race, just as we make it past Sainz around here. Yeah, but the start-finish straight is really long enough with that final corner. It will really work, I'm sure, as Sainz is pretty close to us going into that left-hander here. And now there is just the Red Bull of... Oh, we almost spin. That is what is happening if you are too early on the throttle on most of these corners. However, the track is really kind of flowing. As I said, it is a lot of fun to race here with other cars as the GT3 and the older Formula 1 cars, but somehow the flow feels a little off in these Formula Ultimate Gen 2 cars, so with the modern Formula 1 cars. Which I don't know why that is exactly the case. Maybe you have to get a good setup here as well. As we're trying to hotlap this track now, changing our ERS into qualifying mode, looking to catch up to Max Verstappen. Yeah, but yeah, somehow it isn't that great with modern F1 cars, and I don't know why that is the case. They just feel a little off. You might probably be able to correct that with a setup. That was what I was about to say. Sorry, but yeah, I'm not really that much into setups. So if you are, you might actually have great fun with these cars on that track as we come around the final corner and end our 5-lap race in P2. Surprisingly, the race was quite fine, probably the best of any tracks we've tested in this series so far. I'm not too sure if that is down to the AI driving some weird lines in some corners that probably is having an effect on the racing, but racing here could definitely work with the newer cars. So racing could or would definitely work, I think, but then again, you'd need to do some changes to the track, just like they did with Zandvoort, to enable F1 to come back here. And if F1 and or Portugal really wanted a race in their country, then there still is Portimao, which I think is better, both in terms of racing and in terms of the pure driving experience, and you don't need to do anything about Portimao. It is Formula 1 ready. Estoril, together with Adelaide, is a track that is nice to remember and drive in sims, but for F1 to return here, it is just not worth the effort. Oh yeah, and please bring back Portimao, Stefano.